Hi guys, so this is our reading for lines 78 to 162 of Big Things Come in Small Packages. Anyway, what happened to change all the name calling started when Tucker was on his pier trying to catch a flounder. He noticed a man standing on the Moton Motel dock just a few yards from him. The man had a thick white mustache and a Van Dyke beard and wore a blue and gold military-style jacket and cap. I wasn't there, so I didn't see him, but that's what Tucker told me. When the man waved, Tucker, being a friendly kind of kid, waved back. They struck up a conversation. The man said his name was Richard and that he was staying at the motel for a few days. His home was in Manteo on Roanoke Island, not far from the Outer Banks, where he worked with the U.S. Life-Saving Service. Tucker figured what he meant was that he was with the U.S. Coast Guard. Tucker was pretty knowledgeable about the Coast Guard, but he'd never heard of this life-saving service. Tucker asked the man if he liked to fish. Richard said yes. He'd been a commercial fisherman before he became a captain in the life-saving service. As a lifesaver, he said he and his men went into the ocean in the middle of hurricanes and nor'easters to save passengers and crew members whose ships were sinking. Of course, anything about water fascinated Tucker, so he must have asked this Richard a million questions. Richard didn't seem to mind, though. He said he didn't get to talk to kids much anymore. Richard said a good crewman had to be strong, an excellent swimmer, a quick thinker, and in good physical health, have good eyesight, and understand how dangerous the sea can be. He told so many stories about life-saving that Tucker wished he could enlist right away, and said so. He had the right qualifications, other than being too young, of course, and too short. Richard told him it wasn't the size of a person that got the job done, it was how bad the person wanted to do it. How were those huge ships 2 and more stories high able to move into the Morehead City port and back out to sea? Most couldn't do it without little tugboats pushing and pulling them in, Richard said. A tugboat could bring in a ship many times its size. Richard said that Tucker would make a good tugboat, and one day might even grow to be a big ship. He thanked Tucker for the conversation, said maybe they'd meet again, and then the man wandered off back toward the motel. Tucker said for the rest of the afternoon he thought over what Richard had said. A few days later, Tucker decided to go with his dad to the Atlantic Beach Pier to fish. His daddy worked there as a cook. For some reason, I couldn't go that day. I've always wished I had. Tucker said he took his surfboard too, just in case fishing got slow. It was early morning, but a hot July wind blew in from the southwest, making the waves choppy and sandy. The tide was going out. Hardly anybody was on the pier, which was another hint that the fish might not be biting. Tucker said only one guy was in the water, floating on a red raft like a huge jellyfish. After a good hour had passed and he hadn't got a bite, Tucker left his rod and reel with his father in the pier restaurant's kitchen and went surfing. After he swam out far enough, he climbed onto his surfboard and rode a wave in. When he glanced back at the pier, guess who he saw? His new friend Richard on the pier, clapping for him. At least this time he had on shorts and a regular shirt. Tucker said he bet Richard had about burned up in that heavy uniform the other day. Richard hollered, "Do it, tugboat! Pull that old wave in!" Tugboat? Tucker said he frowned until he remembered Richard's story about tugboats. So he waved back and swam out to pull in another one, passing the man on the raft. The man said, "You're kinda little to be way out here, ain't you, Squirt?" Tucker just shook his head and kept going. Tucker pulled in 4 more waves until he noticed a tall purple thunderhead rising up on the southwest horizon. That cloud meant a storm was probably on its way, but Tucker figured he had at least half an hour before the wind kicked up the waves and blew the cloud in and the rain began. Tucker wasn't afraid of a thing, but his common sense and his folks had told him to always leave away from water when storms and lightning came along. It's hard to get grown without having common sense, because being stupid can get you killed sometimes. Keeping an eye on the horizon, Tucker went on pulling in those waves until a huge one arched up behind his back and crashed down on him. Tucker disappeared. Wipeout. No big deal for Tucker, though. He popped right up in the water and grabbed his board, which was tied to his ankle. He was all right, but the man on the raft wasn't. He thrashed around in the water, screaming that he couldn't swim. As that big black cloud spread across the sky toward them, the wind and waves grew rougher. Wanting to help the man, but concerned about his own safety, Tucker hesitated, then straddled his surfboard and, using his hands for oars, paddled toward the raft. He'd have time to get the guy's raft back to him and then head in. But as Tucker passed, the man lunged at the surfboard, knocking Tucker off.